right now in China or en route to China to try to extract some concessions to respond to this tariff threat on the part of the president. It's going to be very, very important for these ongoing North Korea talks that are coming up. The Chinese have played, even to the president's liking, a very key role in that. To former National Security Advisor to Vice President Dick Cheney, John Hanna, and Hudson Institute's senior fellow Rebecca Heinrichs. Rebecca, that's sort of like the balance for the president, right? I mean, you don't want to go too tough on the Chinese, or maybe you do, because they have been very instrumental, more to the point Xi Jinping has, to at least get folks to the table or to get the response, presumably we had, out of the North Korean leader. What do you think?
No, I think that, there's a lot of balls that the Trump administration has to juggle on this right now. I think that they're going to go in hard on trade with the Chinese because they understand that the Chinese are going to go hard on us to try to get, they're going to use the North Korea issue as a wedge issue to try to get concessions of the United States on trade. And remember, China is the only country that the president has really talked about using trade in the national security context vis-a-vis North Korea on currency manipulation, on intellectual property theft. And so, I think that the Chinese, if there's any country that has the ability to get the Trump administration to go a little bit softer on them, it's going to be the Chinese, because the North Korea denuclearization issue is the #1 foreign policy issue for the Trump administration right now.
I guess, John, it depends on what we mark as progress, right? The Chinese apparently said, if you think that we're going to agree to a numerical figure, let's say trimming the surplus between our two countries, or China's surplus to the United States by $100 billion, it ain't happening. Now, I don't know on some of these auto areas and others, and to make it fairer for financial firms to go in on their own without hooking up with a Chinese entity, there might be some grounds there. But where do you see the concessions on China's part coming?
Well, I think Rebecca's right. I think, Neil, the Chinese play here is to maintain their cooperation on North Korea. This is a huge win for the president. He secured more Chinese cooperation on this impossible challenge that we face with North Korea than all of his predecessors combined. And I worked for several of them. And I think the Chinese are betting that if they continue to cooperate with us, if they suggest maybe they may go easier on sanctions on North Korea if we get too tough on trade, I think they think they can call the president's bluff, and he'll back off a little bit here and cut them an easier deal on the trade demands.
I was thinking, though, Rebecca, it was Ronald Reagan who, kind of startled the Russians with his talk of, a Star Wars defense initiative. And a lot of people read into that like, wow, this guy's really crazy. But it had the effect of bringing the Russians to the negotiating table. I'm wondering on this front, we're dealing with lots of fronts, I grant you, but the same thing will apply. People just do not know what to make of Donald Trump.
No, they don't know what to make of him. And so I think he's right to go hard on China on this. Remember, we cannot solve the North Korea problem without China's help. China has been providing diplomatic cover for North Korea for years and years. It is the only reason we still have a problem with North Korea is because the Chinese have enabled the North Korean economy to continue their nuclear missile program. So that's really sort of the issue here. The one thing that I would add, though, too, that I think that the Trump administration is missing to use in this context is Japan. Prime Minister Abe, he is suited up. He's on the bench. Coach Trump just needs to let him play more because, the Japanese have a role to play in putting the squeeze on China. And also, the trade issues with Japan have really been small potatoes compared to what we have with China. 60% of Japanese-made cars on American roads today were produced in the United States. So I think it would be good for President Trump to go a little bit softer on Abe and utilize Japan vis-a-vis China in the North Korea context.
John, do you read anything in the fact that the president did, push out the tariff deadline another 30 days for a lot of our allies and friends in Europe, Argentina, Brazil, some of these other players, so that he seems to be more pragmatic and less rigid than some might assume?
Yeah, no, I think there's always that element in play. I mean, that is the art of the deal, if you read it, is that you come in, opening bid, extremely high, keep people off balance, uncertain about where you're going to end up, and then you finally end up with a deal where you come down a little bit, they go up much more, and you get something that serves both your interests, but serves your interests more than anybody else's.
I probably should have read that before negotiating my own contract here. I just find out the other anchors are paid. It's It's going to be annoying. All right, guys, thank you both very, very much.